Well, it is said that there were two fellows, Albert Lord and Milman Parry. What do names mean? We come with names. We work our way into our names. We live into our names. Albert Lord, was he a king? Was he a lord? Milman Parry, did he pare things down? Did he have a million pair knives in his thing? Did he have a million paring knives in his backpack, in his sack, in his rucksack? Well, these two fellows, Albert Lord and Milman Parry, they did research in Yugoslavia about the Odyssey and the Iliad. Well, not exactly. They did research in Yugoslavia about epic bards, seeking always in their heart of hearts to unclog the mystery that is the Odyssey and the Iliad. Those epic poems that are so very old and so very present and so very contemporary and so very futuristic in the way they are. So they went to Yugoslavia and they found real bards living there. This is like in the 1950s about. And they found real bards and they spoke with them and they recorded their songs. Now, when I say song, I mean story. And when I say story, at this moment, in this context, I mean song. Because these bards were Muslim and they sang stories with the accompaniment of an instrument called the Guslar, I believe. And this was a beautiful thing. And they had amazing things they would do, amazing feats of memory they would enact, they would make happen, stories that went on for like hours and hours over many days, just beautiful things, tremendous, miraculous skills these bards had. And this opened their minds and hearts to the possibility that Homer, who wrote, quote unquote, the Odyssey and the Iliad, was not a writer, but a speaker, a singer of tales, which is the name of their book, Singer of Tales, which Albert Lord and it's his son. I'm getting all these names wrong, but that's part of the point, and that you can read and find out about all this stuff. But there's a story from over there about how, where, and why, and when, and what's it all about. There's a story over there about how they got these songs, because they interviewed many bards, and they would speak to them and say, well, where did you learn these songs? Who's your teacher? And they would have various answers, often answers about an uncle or a grandfather, a brother, some guy in town they knew who had taught them these songs. But they would also speak about someone named Guslar, who was legendary and sang songs more beautifully and more miraculously than anybody else. This man, Guslar, so it was said, lived a very long time. He lived to be 125. He lived to be 137. He lived a long time. And he sang songs which were stories. And these songs he sang, they had amazing powers. He sang songs that could stop the sun in the sky. He sang songs that could make the night go on forever. They could stop the night and the stars would cease to revolve just because of his song, because of the beauty of his song. His songs could make gold appear and fires start in our hearts, perhaps, but also in the world. There were many stories about Guslar and his amazing songs. Probably legendary, but perhaps real. None of these fellows had met Guslar, but they had all heard about him and heard stories about him and his ability to tell stories. And there is one story in particular about a young fellow who went to find Guslar to challenge him to a battle of songs, a rap battle, we might call it these days, a guitar solo shredding battle. He went to Guslar. He tried to seek out Guslar to fight him with his own song, because this young guy felt he was a pretty good bard, a pretty good teller of tales. And so he went looking for Guslar, but the problem is no one knew exactly where he was, because he was always moving around, always performing here or there, in a marketplace on one day and in a king's royal palace on another day, and then at a dance for the queen, and then to entertain the janitors out by the garbage dump where they're burning the old garbage, the smoke going up into the sky, blocking the sun. So you never knew where Guslar was, but you knew the general area where he was. Like when you're in the library and there's a book you're trying to find and the computer system is down and you think, well, I think it's over here on these shelves over here. And you reach out and then you pull out the book and it happens to be exactly the right one. Well, like that. That's what this young bard was hoping to do, to just happen on the town. But he also asked around. And many people told him that, well, if he went along a certain road towards this certain village, that might be the place where Guslar was to be found. So this young guy, with his sack full of songs, which were invisible, of course, with his sack full of amazing riffs and melodies which he knew, went along this road, seeking the village where Guslar lived, to challenge him to a duel, a song contest, a storytelling contest. And on the way, on this road, well, night fell, as night does. It falls, it descends, and darkness covered the world. So he went to a little coffee shop there, kind of like an inn. You can pay a little bit and sleep in back. And he went to this coffee shop and he struck up a conversation with the man who owned the place as he sat there drinking his coffee. He talked to the man behind the counter and he said, "I'm here looking for Guslar. Do you know where he lives?" And this man behind the counter said, "Oh, Guslar, yeah, I can take you to him. I know where he is. Yeah, he's a friend of mine, actually." "He's a friend of yours?" the young bard said. "Oh, yeah, he's a friend of mine. I've known him for a while now. How many moons has it been? I don't know. A long while. He's a good guy. Yeah. I hear he sings amazing songs," the young bard said. "Oh, yeah, he can sing some songs. Yeah, they're pretty beautiful. It's true. Yeah, he's known far and wide, actually, for singing these amazing songs. And how about you, young person here? Are you a singer of songs?" "Oh, no," said the young bard. "Oh, no, I'm not a singer of songs." "Oh, I see." Well, they sat together and they drank coffee and they talked about this and that and the weather and the way the ravens cried at night in their different villages. They talked about that and how the apples tasted in different places where they had been. But as they talked, as they spoke, the owner of this coffee shop noticed that this young fellow did in fact have a guslar, a musical instrument, with him there. It was in his backpack, and as he talked to him, as the two of them talked, after a while he saw the neck of this instrument sticking out from the backpack. And he said, "Hey, fellow there, look, I think you've lied to me. You say you don't sing any songs, but I see a guslar right there, an instrument that you can play. Can't you?" And the young guy said, "Well, I don't know. I'm just learning, really." "How about you? Do you play?" "Oh, I play a little bit," said the man behind the counter. "I play a little bit. Here, give me that thing. I'll try it out." So he picked up this instrument, this guslar, and he began to play a song. And it was an amazing song, like a river filled with the wings of bats and with pearls that have been worn by princesses who live inside green pyramids in the jungle. And these princesses write poems to the people they love, the men they love, who are far off always, of course, but the distance between them is a holy, sacred ground that they walk through the power of speech, finding themselves in the arms of the ones they love. And then, of course, there's a wedding, and the bells ring in the church, and the day is different because of that, because of those bells ringing. And even the old woman far off hears those bells, and she weaves that sound into the cloak which she is weaving for her dead husband, who is dead, but she's weaving it for him all the same, because he deserves a good cloak. So that was the song the man behind the counter sang. And he said to the young bard there, the young student, the young fellow, he said, "Yeah, what do you think of that?" And the young guy said, "Wow, that's pretty cool. Where'd you learn that?" And the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, I learned it from Guslar. Yeah, I learned it from him. I heard him sing it, and so I've learned it from him, and so I sing it too." "Do you know any other songs?" the young guy said. "Oh, sure," said the man behind the counter. "Yeah, here's another one that Guslar taught me." And he began to play. And he sang about a mosquito that went buzzing out the ear of a cello player on a windy day. It had bitten the cello player there, and he slapped at his ear, but he missed. But he would wear the scar there for a while, a short scar, but let's call it a scar, on his ear of where the mosquito had bitten him. And the person he was talking to was the mayor of the town, and he saw that, and he realized this fellow, this cello player, wasn't really paying attention. And so they talked about something else. And what they talked about was the waterfall at the heart of the world, the waterfall in which the dead go to wash their bodies clean of all their sins and their problems and their worries, most of all their worries and their doubts. And this waterfall is guarded over by three women who have birds circling around their heads and wear beautiful clothes that always are a different color every time you see them. And the dead go to this waterfall to cleanse themselves, and when they are finished, they get a new name. And with that name, they get a new place to live. And in their next life, when they're born again, when they come out of the ground like the crocuses do in spring, bursting with color out of the ground, when they are born again, the dead, that is, when they are born again into the world, they will live in this town, and they will have this name, because the name and the town are actually the same. So that's the song the guy behind the counter sang. And the young bard listened to this, and the guy behind the counter said, well, what do you think of that? And the young guy said, that's cool. Where'd you learn that? Oh, I learned it from Guslar. Yeah, I learned it from Guslar. He taught me that song some time ago. Yeah, I went there to help him out, fix his washing machine. Actually, it had busted, and I came, and I'm on the side, beside the coffee shop. I fix washing machines. So I went, and while I was there to pass the time, he sang me that song. Do you know any other songs? The young fellow said. Oh yeah, said the old guy. I think I can find at least one more. One more he taught me. It's, these songs, they're like bits of carrot you find in an old bag when you're really hungry, and you dig your hands down there, and then you eat that last bit of carrot, and it's beautiful. These carrots which grew in the garden, presided over by the God, the good God that walks around. I mean, there's many gods, but the one who's the earthen God, the one who they call, the God. And he's got a club, and this club is amazing because it can deal out death on one side, and it can heal on the other side. I mean, not just heal, it can bring you back to life on the other side. So he can kill a warrior, bam, just like that, and if he wants to, if he decides, if he chooses to, he can use the other end of that club. And gently he can speak a beautiful poem and bring it down on the body of the warrior. And as the club touches the warrior, is it still a club when it's used to heal? Can we call it that? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a magic stick. Maybe it's a wand. Maybe the club is a wand and the wand is a club. And you can use a wand as a club, perhaps, if you want to. He brings this wand down, and this warrior who died, this warrior who once loved blue flowers and walked beside a stream and picked the blue flowers for his dear beloved girl that he loved so much, even though he was only 18. Even though, that's when our love is strongest, perhaps. Well, this soldier, the good God, puts the stick down, the wand down, the magical implement down on this man's chest. And he springs up, and his eyes open. And he's alive, and he's awake. And what was death? If you asked him that right there, if you went to him and you asked him, what is death? He would say, death is sleep. And then, shrugging off the night's slumber, he would walk away between the dead bodies in the field, some of whom are his friends. Well, that's another song I learned from the Guslar. What do you think of that? And the young guy said, it's cool. It's cool. And then the man behind the counter said, so what'd you come to this town for anyway? Like, why are you here? Is there a reason you came? I see you've got this instrument here, this Guslar in your bag. Have you come seeking Guslar, perhaps? And the man said, no, I just came. I have to see a man about a horse down the street a little bit for my uncle. That's all. I'll just do that, and then I'll go home. Well, here's your instrument, the man behind the counter said. Here's your Guslar. You can have it back. It plays pretty well. Good luck. Enjoy your travels. Thanks, said the young man. Well, he went away. He slept in the back of that house in the inn. You pay money to do that. And he left early. He left some money on the counter, but he didn't want to speak to the man behind the counter, this man who ran the coffee shop. Because he thought to himself, if this man, this humble guy in a coffee shop who just knows Guslar, has amazing songs like that, songs filled with weddings and funerals and gods who bring people back to life and waterfalls at the center of the world, well, gosh, what have I got? I've got what? I mean, I got the song about the ladybug, the song about the snake, the song about the turtle. It's about it. I'm nothing, he thought to himself. I'm nothing. And he walked away from that house, thinking that he was nothing, but inside that nothing there was, of course, something. Because inside it he had seen what a song can do, and he remembered this. And he went home, And he went back to his life, whatever life that was. Shall we find out what his life was? Well, maybe he was an apprentice carpenter, actually. But he dreamed of using that wood to make something else, to make an instrument, a musical instrument that would sing and tell stories at the same time, that would help him tell stories. So though he came away from that coffee shop feeling like he was nothing, as I said, inside that nothing there was something like an ember hidden in ash. For ash is the ending of things, right? Ash is nothing. You are ash. You are nothing. You are dust. Dust in the wind. Another one bites the dust. You are dust. You are nothing. To dust we shall return. The ashes are nothing, but the ember is something. The ember has heat and light. And this fellow had this ember inside him which said, I'm something. I can be something. For he had seen what a song could do. And perhaps a song could perhaps stop the sun, and stop the night, and stop the stars. And so, slowly, carefully, in secret, he practiced with that Guslar. He practiced, and eventually he did find a teacher, an uncle or a brother, I forget who it was, a grandfather, a guy who lived at the edge of town. And he learned these songs. Well, he learned some songs. I'm not sure they're the songs that came from Guslar, perhaps. They don't have to be legendary songs, but he learned some pretty good songs. And this young fellow grew older, and he became known for his songs, and he sang songs in his village at weddings and at funerals and at parties, and now and again, occasionally, sometimes even in the throne room of a king, but often in the marketplace, or often to the children as they would listen to his songs, and sometimes often to the old men or the old women as they worked at their tasks, weaving or smoking or resting from working in the fields. So he would sing these songs. And eventually someone said to him, eventually someone listened to him when he said his story, told his story about going to the coffee shop to search for Guslar. And when he told this story to enough people, finally he found someone who said to him, you know, that man in the coffee shop, that was Guslar. You idiot. That was Guslar. That was him. That was him right there, hiding in the coffee shop. Because he moves around always. You don't know where he is. You don't know where he's going to be. You don't know where his home is. For his home is the song and the performance of the song. And that's what you found right there. Are you saying he doesn't exist? That he's legendary? That he's like metaphorical? This young guy said. No, I'm saying that was the man in the coffee shop. You should go back. Maybe he's still there. Well, at first he laughed this off. But then he said, I think I will go back. So he went, across the roads of the world. As all the roads grew dark, he traveled. As all the roads grew light in the morning, with the pink light of dawn, he traveled. He went across the earth, on the roads through the villages, and sometimes he stopped in, a coffee shop or an inn. But none of them were the coffee shop or the inn. And finally he got there, and when he got there, he knew it because he remembered the way the hills were and the way the river had been over here. The town was different. Many years had passed, but still this was the spot. He thought to himself, what's going to be on this corner? What's going to be on this street here? Something else, perhaps. Maybe they knocked that coffee shop down. These modern times. They cut down the forests and they cut down the buildings to build a new building. Something else is there, a chicken factory or a cabbage processing plant. Who knows? So with these thoughts in his head, but also with a song in his head, like a bird, he walked down the road and he came and there was a coffee shop there. He stood outside. It was the same building. He remembered. He remembered it so well, going in there and hearing those amazing songs from the guy who ran the coffee shop. Had that been Guslar? Had that really been him, the legendary man who lived to be 135 and knew all these songs? Well, he went forward. He opened the door. He went inside. There was smoke in the air, men smoking. There was somebody playing a Guslar in the corner. Not too well, but playing it. There were people talking. There were some fellows playing chess. And then he looked to the counter there, and he looked, and there was a young woman there. And he went to her, and he said, hi, would the owner happen to be here? I really want to meet the owner. You want to meet the owner? Is there a problem? Something wrong? No, nothing's wrong. I mean, I love the coffee here. I come here all the time, kind of. And it's a really great place. I just wanted to talk to the owner and congratulate him. She said, all right, he's out back. I'll get him. So he went out back. She went out back, and she got the owner. And the owner came in. And it was a thin man with a nervous laugh and a purple hat on. It was someone who, stumbles in the mouth. It was someone who did not look anything like the man he'd seen before. And this young fellow, who was no longer young, looked at him and said, "Hi, do you sing songs?" And the man laughed. He said, "No, I don't sing songs. I write code for computers. I'm a math kind of guy. I don't, that's a kind of song, really, some say, but it's, it's not what you're talking about. No, see you later." And the guy looked at him and he's like, "You're not him." And he turned and he went outside. By this time, night had completely fallen. It falls halfway, then it falls all the way. It was dark. And he stood for a while outside that cafe, that coffee shop, where once he had heard the songs by a man who might have been Guslar, the legendary Guslar. And he stood outside that coffee shop for a while. There was not much going on the road there. And he thought about the coffee shop as a place where you eat and you drink and you tell stories, perhaps, and you hear music and you talk to others. He thought about all these things. The moon was just rising beyond the trees. And far off, a dog started to bark. So we say the Odyssey was written by a man named Homer. We say the Iliad was written by a man named Homer. But we don't know who he was. But what we don't know is as nourishing to us as anything we might eventually find out, as if we knew. What I'm saying is the shadow of this being, this person, is as instructive, as nourishing as the person, him or herself. Some say Homer was a woman. Some say Homer is the son of Telemachus, who married one of the daughters of Nestor and gave birth to Homer. And that's why Homer knew everything he did. Knew the layout of Odysseus's palace, knew the way the boats work, knew what they ate, what they said, because Homer listened well, and he was pretty much there. He heard it from Telemachus, his father. That's what some people say. Other people say that, like I said, Homer was a woman, and that's how he knew everything he knew. All that stuff about the loom and how the loom works, and what the women talk about when the suitors are down there making noise, and what Penelope did while Odysseus was gone, and what the women say, and how Helen did some weaving right there, in her palace during the banquet that happened where Telemachus walked in. All this knowledge of where the serving women went in the palace and where the keys were stored, well, only someone who was female themselves, only someone who was a woman would understand these things. And not only that, only a woman poet could really understand Circe, the lady of the beasts, who stands at the center of this story. Only a woman could understand Athena and Helen and these characters. That's what they say. So Homer must have been a woman, because you have to know these things to speak of them. And what is to imagine? Is that something different, or is that the same? Can you imagine your way into this story? To know and to imagine, are they different, or are they the same? Homer has no fixed address, though numerous towns and cities in ancient Greece have claimed that they are the birthplace of Homer. It's said that he was blind. That's the legend. It's said that after him, people imitated him, and they were the students of Homer, the tribe of Homer, and they sang his songs, keeping them in the world. And his name speaks to us of home. There's a home inside Homer. And a dog, sometimes you could say, could be a Homer, a dog who finds his way home, like a homing pigeon. The dog always finds his way home. You can take the dog far away. You can plop him down in a story. You can make him one of the dogs, the golden dogs, at the doorway of the Phaeacian palace. You could say that this dog is in fact Argos, Odysseus's dog, who died after 20 years when he finally came home. Odysseus recognized the dog, scratched him behind his ears, and the dog died. You could take a dog and say, well, you're Argos now. You're a golden dog now at the doorway of the Phaeacians. You're one of the guard dogs of Eumaeus the swineherd, those guard dogs that almost tore Odysseus limb from limb when he came wandering and ended up at Eumaeus's hut. You could say your dog is one of those, but these would all be games and silly jokes, because your dog knows who he is. He is your dog. He knows his way home, and to know your way home is to know who you are, where you fit into the world, where you are, what your place is, right? And Homer, does he have a place? Maybe he has no place. Maybe he lives, well, over there, maybe, in that village or that village. Maybe his home is the song. Maybe that's where he lives. One thing that keeps bards traveling is hunger. You sing for your supper. Sing for your supper, we say. So the bard sings and is paid. Perhaps in money, perhaps in coins, in dollars, in whatever you want to call it, whatever the money is of the realm. But perhaps the bard is fed as well. You give the bard some food. Does this make a bard like a beggar who just doesn't get, cash, but gets a crust of bread, a hunk of an apple, a piece of a carrot? Is that what a bard is a beggar? They start with the same letter, but I'm not sure they're the same, unless we're all beggars before the great gods of song who throw down a few crumbs to us now and then. Well, hunger sends the bards wandering, and they go wandering, singing their songs, and they sing, and they get a meal. And they sing, and they get a meal. And perhaps when they sing, they might sing a song about hunger. For hunger is what drives us. All of us eat, and perhaps we are eaten. Well, not perhaps. All of us eat, and someday shall be eaten. Not by an animal, well, maybe by an animal, but definitely by the earth, by death, that eats all things. And the gods knew something about this. They did. For they had all been inside the belly of Cronus, right? Cronus, who was the god who swallowed his children. Cronus, who said, everything stops with me. I am the god. There will never be another. So his wife would give birth, and, well, he would eat the child right away. God ate him. So he ate the gods. Hestia, the first one, the goddess of the hearth. He ate her first. Interesting she comes first. Hestia, who guards the sacred fire, the fire at the center of the house. It's sacred because it's a fire. Perhaps you make offerings into it like we do in India. Perhaps it's sacred in other ways, like it is just the fire of the house, and we eat at that fire, and we are warmed by that fire, because fire is crucial, isn't it not? Divides us from the animals, some say. Well, she was eaten first, but the others were eaten also. Artemis, Apollo, Ares, they all went in there. All the ones that start with A, because we are at the beginning of things, at the beginning of time. They all got eaten. Cronus ate them all. There was a lot of room there in his belly. He ate them all, devoured them there. But they did not die. They were just in his belly. Perhaps they sang songs inside that belly. Perhaps they worked out mathematical problems about the future of the universe. Perhaps they told stories inside that belly. What do you think? What stories did Artemis tell Apollo in the belly of Cronus? What stories did Apollo tell Ares? What did they tell each other? These forces: fire, love, distance, strength, strategy, insight, all these powers in these gods, and they spoke to each other, and perhaps they told stories inside the belly. And that was the rumbling in the belly of Cronus. Well, as you probably know, eventually his wife gave Cronus a stone to eat. For Zeus had been born. Zeus had been born. And Zeus was reared far away on Crete, that island, cared for there. Meanwhile, Cronus ate the stone. He could not tell the difference. Interesting, huh? This big power, this giant thing that is Cronus, is also strangely somehow, well, not perceptive. We might say dumb, stupid, an idiot, but I don't know if that's true, but certainly not perceptive. It's a quality that giants have. Big things. Governments, corporations perhaps. schools of insight, perhaps all these big things. When you're big, you lose your ability to see the small, and a child is small, though a child will grow. So he was given a stone, and he ate that stone. And Zeus was, well, he was taken far away. And eventually Zeus's mother, Rhea, she helped him. She gave him a potion which, if Cronus drank this, oh man, everything would come out, Everything in him would come out. What was in this potion? Can we imagine? Raven blood, gasoline, petroleum distillates, hydroxyphyllozolinone, saxophone? What was in this drink? We don't know. We're being silly. We're being wise. We're being deep. We are here. I feel the grimness of this moment. I feel that shuddering cup which Zeus carried to his father, giving him a drink. Did Zeus carry it? I can't remember, honestly. Maybe Rhea gave it to him. I think Zeus gave it to him. I think Zeus was in disguise. Yes, because the gods can disguise themselves. They can become a voice. They can become a hiccup. They can become a bird. They can become a flower. And so Zeus, in disguise, as a cupbearer, went to Cronus, and he gave him the cup filled with this crazy liquid, this midnight to drink, this juice of 1,000 apple seeds, this crushed bones of the god of time. Everything was in this drink. It was a horrible drink, and Cronus drank it down, and bah! Everything came out. Did you get that? Everything came out. Everything came out, and the gods came out. Hestia came out. Apollo and Artemis came out. Ares came out. They all came out of the belly of Cronus. And of course, well, together with Zeus, they did some bad business to Cronus, and he was no longer king of the world, king of the universe, king of the everything. Zeus was that king from then on, after a fierce battle, of course. But the thing is, the gods were those who were not eaten. We eat, we have a feast, we enjoy the foods of this world, and we die, and we are eaten by the earth, we could say, eaten by death. But the gods are those who were not eaten. We refuse, they say. We will not be devoured. Not only because we came out of Cronus, but because even when we were in there, we were still ourselves. We didn't become him. That's what eating's all about. You eat something and it becomes you. And when you don't like something, when you throw it up or indigestion, is when your body says, no, this is not me. This little piece of spare bicycle chain I ate, this thing with this horrible hot sauce, well, horrible to me, whatever it is, it's not me. And so it's no longer part of you, and it's out of you. So Zeus knew something about bellies and about eating, although perhaps the gods who'd been in the belly knew even more. But nevertheless, there came a time when Zeus was called upon to use this knowledge. For Prometheus came. This was early on. All this is early stuff. Beginning of the alphabet, beginning of the calendar, beginning of everything, back near the zero. Not zero exactly, but 0.1. This is right at the start. And Prometheus came, and he was there anyway. And they were trying to decide who was going to be a god and who was not. Who were going to be mortals and who were going to be gods. And how to decide this. And somehow it was assumed from the start that someone would make offerings and someone would receive them. It's interesting, huh? There had to be dialogue right from the start. It was assumed there would be dialogue. There would be transaction, if we can call it that. There would be relationship between these powers. One would give and one would receive. And perhaps those who receive would give as well. Give of their wisdom and their power and their strength and their god magic. Perhaps that's the way it goes. Perhaps. So early on in the history of the universe, well, they had to decide this. And so the question was how to do it. So Prometheus came up with a method. So he killed an ox, it was, and he made 2 piles of the ox's being, right? And one of these piles, on top of it, there was a stomach and the guts of the animal, of the ox. And beneath it was all the best, tastiest meat, the best stuff, hidden, obscured by the belly, the stomach, and by the guts. And in the other pile, well, you had the fat on top, the luscious fat, a sweet thing. It's like dessert, if you're a meat eater, I suppose, of this time, in this way. The fat was on top, the good stuff. And then beneath it were the bones. Who wants the bones? Do you want to eat bones for dinner? Well, the dogs do, perhaps. If your name is Argos, perhaps you might chew on a bone if you're a dog. But normally we want the meat. That's understood to be the most nourishing part of the animal. And the fat, well, that's good, but it's kind of like dessert, right? So So there's two piles, and let's get it straight here. On the top of one pile, there are the guts and the belly. Ugh, I don't want to eat a belly. I am a person with a belly. You want me to eat a belly? It's like two mirrors looking at each other. I don't want to do that. The other side, there's the fat, which, well, I'm speaking to you now as this person. I don't know if fat sounds so great, but let's say it's great. It's the ice cream. It's the best part. And beneath it are the bones. But they're hidden. Nobody sees the bones. And Prometheus said to Zeus, "You choose. What's it going to be? Who gets what? How does it work?" And, well, there were two sides, of creation right now, but they hadn't decided who was going to be mortal and who were going to be gods. They were just two sides of beings, basically, two teams of beings. And so for his team, for his side, Zeus looked at these things, and he chose. And he chose the one with the fat on top, of course, because that's the really good stuff, the dessert. And Prometheus is like, "Ah, you got the bones, buddy. That's all you got." And, of course, the mortals got the belly and the guts, which was pretty gross. Nobody wants to eat that. But underneath was all the good meat. And so for this reason, in the Greek world, in the stories, even now when they sacrifice, when Eumaeus and Odysseus have a meal, they give the bones and the fat to the gods, but the meat of it they take for themselves. Because that's the way it was since the beginning, since Prometheus divided things up in this way. So the thing is, the point we're getting to here is that in fact, was Zeus tricked or was he not? Some say he was tricked. He was flummoxed. This weird riddle that Prometheus gave to him just bamboozled his brain, and he ended up with the bad side of the bargain. He got the fat and the bones. And, well, the dogs like the bones, but generally speaking, we don't want a meal of bones. That's what some say. But others say that, in fact, Zeus was extremely perceptive. And he saw exactly what Prometheus was doing. And he saw, with his godlike vision, he saw into those piles of stuff that had been the ox. And he saw what was truly there. And he saw that one side had the meat which is the animal, but the meat which will perish. And the other side gets the bones which endure. Right, the bones which last. They last the longest. Everything else decays. The hair, the flesh, the skin, the eyes, all of this stuff goes eaten away by the earth and the animals of the earth. But the bones stay. They remain. And Zeus knew that he wanted to remain. He wanted to be a god who stays. And so the gods get the bones because they endure, while we flicker and die like flowers, like crocuses, jumping out of the earth and then withering and dying. Well, Odysseus knew something of the belly also. He spoke of it there in the Phaeacian palace, in the feasting hall. He had come there, if you remember. It had been a long journey, 18 days on a raft over the sea, and then 2 days being bashed and pummeled without a raft on the sea, because Poseidon had discovered him and destroyed that raft, and he'd been just carried here and there on the waves like a scrap of meat, just struggling to hold on to breath, that precious breath that is the air which we breathe into us and gives us life and gives us song and speech and story. So he'd struggled on that sea, and finally he'd been washed ashore and had crawled out of the sea onto the island of the Phaeacians. And he had managed to meet a young princess there, Nausicaa by name. And she had helped him, along with Athena. They both had helped get him to the palace of the Phaeacians. And there he found his way to the feasting hall, and there he was with the king and the queen, Alcinous the king and Arete the queen. And they saw he was a traveler from a long way off and had had some hard traveling. So there was a table there and there was food on it. But before he ate any food, hungry as he was, the queen said, "Traveler, stranger, I am curious, what is your story? The heart inside me longs to know who you are and where you have come from. Tell us your story." And Odysseus, who so often in the Odyssey is ready to tell a story, a story which is often just a smokescreen, which is just lies and camouflage, but is nevertheless engaging and nevertheless feels real. Odysseus, who so often is ready to tell a story of who he is and where he is from, in this moment he had no story. In this moment he just gave the basics. He said, I'm a shipwrecked sailor. I washed up on your shore. But I really cannot tell you more now, because the belly is a shameless master, a shameless dog. We must obey the belly, and I am hungry. So Odysseus, that teller of tales, that singer of tales, did not tell a story in that moment. Is that where the song stops? Is that where the poem cannot go any further? Is that the wall of fire beyond which beauty cannot go? Hunger, is that where it all stops? Well, but maybe you can make a song of hunger. Maybe when you have nothing, you can make a song of that nothing, because nothing can also be something. It can be an ember burning up like a fire. And over that fire you can roast the good meat from the sacrifice. And though there was a belly on top of that pile, well, perhaps we eat the belly, perhaps we eat the guts, but we also eat the good meat below that. The good meat, and the gods do not get to do that. We get to feast and to dance and to feast on this life, which is a dance and a song and a wild story, in which we are the tellers and in which we are told, by which we are told. So Odysseus, when asked by the queen to tell her where he was from and who he was, gave only this little sketch, this short little tiny story, this belly song he sang, about how the belly is like a shameless dog, and how the belly is also like a master who we must obey. Strange that. A dog. We are usually the masters of the dogs, but here that dog is also a master mastering us, the belly mastering us. That's what Odysseus said in this short little story he told the queen. And then he said simply, I am hungry, and I must eat. And the queen, she understood, for she knew what it was to eat and to be satisfied. And she did not press him further, did not say, no, stranger, you must tell me your story, or else. She didn't say that, because there was, sparkling wine on the table, and bread and cheese, and roast meat also. And so she understood. And so Odysseus ate the food before him, and he was satisfied. And after that, well, they took him to a beautiful bedroom, and he lay down on that bed, that good soft bed. There was a tree outside the window, its leaves illuminated by the moonlight. Odysseus lay down on that bed, and he slept like he hadn't slept in a long, long time. And above the palace was the moon, like an old bone rolling around the sky, shining down upon the palace and upon the sea, and also upon the roads of the world. And beside one of those roads there was a coffee house, and outside this coffee house there was an old man. He'd just finished sweeping the coffee house after putting the chairs on the tables. He'd locked the place up, and he was standing outside on that road, looking up at the moon. And there might have been an instrument in his sack, maybe a Guslar, or perhaps not. But he looked up at the moon. Far off a dog cried out once. And then the man turned and walked away. And as he walked, he sang to himself a little song.